5,000 hours in the Beech with no accidents, no violations, and I've had a great career. I'm only 81 years old. I'm flying every day with 50 hours a month right now, instructing. I had a career flying the corporate jets. I've done all that good stuff. Now I start a flying club, the largest flying club in Wisconsin, 100 members and 4 airplanes, and I'm flying yet about 50 hours a month at this time. Okay, I started flying when I got my commercial license in multi-engine back in 1959. Started my flying career in 1958, but I started flying with a commercial license in 1959 out of Beloit, Janesville, Wisconsin. And my first freight hauling was in a Cherokee or running to O'Hare with many packages for General Motors, picking up freight, dropping off freight. Then, of course, we flew for General Motors, and a lot of this was St. Louis. We ended up in St. Louis and going to Flint, Michigan, Kansas City, and Detroit area, Youngstown, Ohio, mostly for General Motors. And then I flew freight, of course, for Chrysler in Belvedere, Illinois. However, I started flying Beech 18s at about, the Beech 18 is a twin-engine Beechcraft airplane. I started flying the early model Beeches in 1961 and 2, prior to going in the Navy, flying freight in these airplanes. Spent a couple of years in the Navy on a carrier as an air traffic controller, and then after that I started flying freight. Bought a G model Beech 18. That's a high cab model airplane that I had purchased in Dallas, Texas. Flew down there, brought it back in IFR conditions, landed at Wichita in the fog, and had to stay overnight because it was pretty nasty weather. It was the first time I'd flown this particular airplane, so I didn't want to take a chance. But then I brought that back. I ended up flying about 5,000 hours of hauling freight for many different companies out of the Janesville, Beloit, Rockford, Illinois area, and passengers. But most of my time was flying freight in the Beech 18. I really was fortunate in my flying, never had an accident or a violation, and never ground looped a Beech. Ground looping is where you lose control and you spin around to the ground. Some of my friends done that, but I think the funniest thing, I was not flying, but a friend of mine, we're having an air show at this Beloit airport, and he comes over ahead of the airport with a Beech 18, buzzes the field, and went right over our hangar at maybe 100 feet. And we happened to have the FAA lady on there with her steerman, and she's seen this, and she looked the other way, and she says, "I didn't see that." And I said, "Well, you must have heard it." But that, as far as the Beeches go, that was one of the funniest incidents that we ever, that I'd ever seen. So we've done a lot of it. We've been to the West Coast with the Beech 18. We've been all over the country. Florida, been to California, New York. Great airplane, a great experience, and I'm so glad to see somebody's keeping these restored and flying today. And I'm going to talk to this guy that I'm interviewed for, that I think he should have me go along. I just told him about the JADO bottles. He tried to question me on what's that panel on the back of the engines for. I said, "Well, that's where the JADO bottles were." "Oh," he says, "no, you're too smart." I said, "No, I'm not too smart," but I flown him. I said, "Take those covers off and put those JADO bottles on there, and you perform a lot better." So, it's almost like the DC-3 world, where everybody has a bond with DC-3s. It's a great airplane. It's a dependable airplane. The Beech 18 was used as a corporate airplane, and then as the different, more modern airplanes came along, it was used as freighters. My twin brother also flew a Beech 18 in the for his first job as a corporate pilot, as a co-pilot mechanic. He got the job because I didn't have a mechanic's license, and he got the job. I taught him how to fly. I mean, he gets the job flying Beech 18 for a living. However,
and they say there's no competition between twins.
Not at all, no. Well, I think one of the most interesting things I've flown in the Beech 18 is I had a party that had a real expensive Colt that had broke its neck as a horse or a colt. They asked me to fly it to Purdue to take it down there for them to repair this colt. So they put the colt in the airplane with a doctor and tranquilizers to keep the colt, because they would kick the side of the airplane out if it come to. But they kept it sedated. We flew it down to Purdue. They hauled it off to the clinic down there, and they restored this colt. So that was one of the most interesting things.
So you had a veterinarian then on board with you?
Right, we had a veterinarian on board to sedate the horse or the colt. So that was one of the most interesting things. People-wise, one other thing, people-wise, I flew Greg Sherwood Dodge, Horace Dodge of the Dodge Motor family. I flew his wife, Greg Sherwood was her movie name. She was a movie actress, and I flew her. But her husband would come over to Beloit. She was from Beloit, Wisconsin. He came over in his DC-6, and just him, but I would pick her up at O'Hare and bring her up, and then take her and her girlfriend shopping at Mings Field in Chicago. And I did that a lot of times with her, girlfriends.
So you flew movie stars then?
Oh yes, and in my later career I flew for a movie producer in Lears and Hawkers, but that's another story. And I flown to Russia, delivered a Hawker to Russia, and I spent 3 weeks flying this Russian guy around. And I was supposed to be there a week, and his pilot never got up to speed, so I was there 3 weeks, and at 3 weeks he says, "Can you stay another week?" And I said, "I'm going to be home, or I might as well stay here and fly. My wife's not going to put up with this, because I have a paid-for trip to Seattle and up in British Columbia to go fishing next week." "Okay, I'll let you go then," he said. But yeah.
You've had a really interesting career.
Very interesting career. Mm-hmm. So yes, and 2 years on a carrier. I was also an air traffic controller for Gemini 4, 6, and 7 space capsule recoveries for the Gemini program. Picked up the astronauts. Jim Lovell became a good friend. He was Gemini 7, and then after he got out of I cleared the helicopters to land in the carrier with the astronauts aboard, 4, 6, and 7. And then Jim Lovell became a good friend, as he was based in Chicago, the same hangar I was in. So what we did there is, I always questioned about Apollo 13. I said, how accurate was that? It was a great movie. He said, I was there for every minute of the filming of that Apollo 13, and I didn't let him embellish anything. I told it as it was, and I told him, don't you make a story out of this. This is the way it happened. So it was really interesting to hear Jim say that. But,
so did he give Tom Hanks pretty high marks?
He gave him high marks, very high. He said, done really, really well. So,
that's a great story.
And one other quick story about the astronaut program. Jim Irwin, Apollo 15 commander, walked on the moon. When he got out of the service, he became an evangelist. He says, I need to tell people about God, that we belittle God, that I want to let people know after being up in the moon and looking at that blue ball down there, that it's surreal. And so I flew him on speaking engagements after he got down. So he gave my wife and my sons a really nice picture of him on the moon, and with his love from the moon, Jim Irwin. And he said, "Where's Eldon tonight?" My wife says, "Oh, he's in California."
So, that's a neat story, too.
I've had a great career and been blessed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so.
Well, is there anything special that you that comes to mind when you look at a beach like Matt's out there? I mean, what are your first feelings when you see a plane like that?
Well, I would just love to jump in there and go fly it. First of all, because it's a great airplane to fly. You tinker with it, set the cowl flaps, you're setting the mixtures, and you're watching the flames on the engine at night to make sure you have the fuel mixture right. We didn't have any ITT gauges, so you fly along. You want that flame to look pretty bright yellow at night, and you knew how much to lead it out. I always call it a tinkering airplane. You're always tinkering with something in there. And the other thing, all the freight, back to the freight hauling. We did a lot of freight hauling, a lot of it was at night. So we would take somebody along to fly along with us and let people build time. Plus, I could get some sleep some nights. And of course, if they didn't wake me up before I run fuel tanks empty, as soon as I heard that engine idle or change anything, the prop change, I would just get up and I'd hit those switches. I knew what was going on, but after spending lots of hours going across country at night, it was pretty interesting. Yeah.
That's kind of a hard life, though, too.
Well, yeah, it's hard for a married man to and my wife, she was a trooper, raised our boys, 2 boys and 2 daughters, and she did all the hard work, and I was out flying all over the country. I would call her from Freeport in the Bahamas and say, how's the snowstorm up there? I'm stuck down here. You don't say that too often, but in the flying career, and like I say, I've been flying for 63 years now, and it's 37,000 hours, accident-free hours. Wright Brothers Master Pilot Award. I don't know how I got all that. I don't care about awards, but I did get that for 50 years with no accidents or violations.
I think that's
and now
cool.
it's 63 years.
That's cool.
Still enjoy it, still love it.
Yeah.
And I have one of my students with me here today that he got his license, and now he got his tail dragger license. And so I want to pass as much knowledge as I can along. I try to give most of the good knowledge. I don't tell them about everything that's happened.
But coming back to the Beech 18, that's a great one to really cut your teeth on. It sounds like that's kind of the running theme that I'm hearing from all these freight folks.
It's kind of a real step up from flying, say maybe an Aztec or an Apache or a 310 Cessna or something. When you move into that airplane, now you're talking about total 900 horsepower. And you're used to flying maybe 500 horsepower. And then the radial engine and the sound of the radial engine. And of course we have the short stack, so we get the more power out of the engines, a little noisy. I've never worn earplugs, and I still don't today, and I can still hear pretty good. Well, my wife says sometimes I can't, but
well, that's a selective hearing thing.
Selective
yes,
hearing, but
yes.
yeah, but it's a great fun airplane, and I really enjoyed walking around today at EAA and looking at all these Beechcraft sitting out here. But this G model is a special part in my heart because I owned one of those. Bought it in Dallas, Texas, brought it back to Wisconsin, and it was a great airplane for us.